Okay, today I get to lecture about gender identity. I love it. So you could say there's just men and women, but we've already learned about some of this in between category. And I'll go into transgendered people here in just a minute as well. So, gender identity, what does this mean? Well, what do you identify as? If someone says, "What are you?" gender wise, you would say, "Well, I'm male, I'm female, you know, maybe neither, both." We'll get into all these different categories later. Okay, so when I talk about this, of course, a lot of it has to do with nature. Testosterone, estrogen, XY versus XX. But now we're going to kind of switch gears and say some of it really has to do with nurture, what a boy is like, what a girl is like. Because now we're going to talk about your femininity and your masculinity. Later, I'll argue everyone has both, but that's not today's lecture. And so, what forces, especially from a nurture perspective, if I can really hone in on this, shape or mold us like I'm shaping this piece of clay down here into what is supposed to look like a girl or what is supposed to look like a boy? Now, I'm going to bring in three different areas of psychology that Tim, this guy right here, thinks have to do with the formation of our gender identity. So, the first is learning theory from psychology, which is pretty straightforward. If you've had me, you know all about this, whatever approach. Social psychology, that's what I have my PhD in, about following norms and group pressure and stuff like this. And then cognitive psychology, thirdly, which is all about how we think and categorize things, which is how we categorize men and women. Okay, so enough about all this. I'm going to start off with learning. Okay, so learning theories. I don't know if you like The Secret Life of Pets, but here's Max, Tiny Dog from Secret Life of Pets, and learning theories have a lot to do with animal research. But if you remember, maybe if you were in my intro class, Thorndike in 1911, he would put these cats in puzzle boxes. This is operant conditioning, not classical conditioning. Some of y'all are going, great. I don't have to remember all that CS, UCS crap. But what he would do is make these contraptions, and if the cat figured it out, he could get out of the box. He would have to operate on the box, thus the term operant conditioning. And so this led to this term he called the law of effect, or this whatever principle, I should say, that the animals would repeat behaviors, the cats would repeat behaviors that led to them getting out of the cage. That's simple enough. And that animals avoid behaviors that lead to painful or unsuccessful outcomes. So I don't know if you need to have a law for that, but it's just hedonism, right? It's like, I'll do this. This is my whole thing against religion. Sometimes, even though I'm a Catholic, some people's like, okay, everybody will, if you go through door A, you get heaven. If you go through door B, you'll get hell. It's like, okay, I'll do anything it takes to go through door A. That's a dumb approach. You know what I mean? You should get punished for going to whatever that door, but enough about that. So anyway, most of us work on this pain and pleasure principle. So what I can do with animals is start to shape their behavior with pain and pleasure. So I don't do it just right away because animals don't do what I want them to do right away. For instance, shaking. That maybe I have to shape or mold the animal. Now it becomes really important for this class where I kind of groom the animal to be a certain way. Like in my intro class, you've probably heard me talk about teaching my dog to shake like this. Well, the first thing I would do is just touch his paw. He doesn't know what shake is, but then if I give him a cookie for touching his paw, he associates that with the word shake and getting a cookie. Then I would hold his paw, and that would move him up to the second level. So first level, touch, hold. Then eventually I would grab his paw and lift it out of the air, and then finally, every time I say shake, Rowdy will immediately just lift his paw out of the air. I'm surprised he's not right behind me right now. I'm not kidding either. Okay, so get this idea of grooming a behavior right here. Okay, so a behavior can be either good or bad. Why do I have these quotation marks? Because it depends on the pet owner. You might teach your dog to bite people, but I'm going to teach my dog to be sweet to people. So if it's good, how do I reinforce good? I hope you remember some of this. Positive reinforcement is the easiest one. If my dog goes to his kennel, I'll give him a treat. Like if I do good, I get money. Capitalism. Don't get me started. Okay, negative reinforcement is the hardest one to teach, but it also increases good behavior. What's a good behavior? Buckling your seatbelt. Now, for some reason in my Mini Cooper, when they ran the amp through my Mini Cooper, there's no way to not run it through the seatbelt buzzer, so it's 10 times louder than it should be. My shit has that shit buckled right away. It makes me do the good behavior because I'm avoiding that stupid noise over here. I hope that one makes sense, but this is the way I can shape good behavior. That's the idea behind the buzzer. Bad behavior is easy. If you do something bad, I whip you. I grew up in that family. Hopefully you don't hit your dog. It's not the best way. Or you can, don't get me started on Caesar the dog whisperer, or I can take something away. He takes away attention, and that's how he trains dogs. Like with people, I could take away your phone to train you. Now you can start to see how I shape an animal over here using these 4 principles that I've just outlined. If you have any questions about those, please give me a call. Now, here's shaping. How does it relate to gender? Well, if I'm a little boy and I play with trucks and not Barbie dolls, maybe I get rewarded. Vice versa. At my house, be like, honey, something down here is going to happen if you don't stop playing with those goddamn Barbie dolls. I don't know. Hopefully you didn't grow up like this. But for girls, I would argue it's okay if they play sports, and boys. It's kind of neutral. But like if a boy wants to come play with this makeup kit, that would kind of be me. I would love to be a makeup artist. It's like, Tim. I don't know if y'all like King of the Hill. It's like, Bobby? You know what I mean? It's like there's something wrong with him. He's like in there playing with girls' toys. So that's kind of how we start to shape behavior from a gender perspective. And I think I have this last little overhead on this section, but I like it because, like, do we shape men like this? I would argue no. Women can do this. I'm going to argue that women are given more latitude in the very next section, I think. Okay, the second area that I wanted to bring in is social psychology. I'm going to spend the most time on this one because I have my PhD in it, and I think it has a lot to do with the development of our masculinity and femininity. So social, group psychology, it's all about peer pressure, and there's a lot of group pressure or peer pressure when it comes to acting like a man or acting like a woman. So Bib Latané, one of my favorite people to talk about, talked about the multiplication of impact. And what does that mean? Well, here you have this one person over here. As the group gets bigger and bigger, according to his theory, they exert more influence on this one individual. Just think of it. I use stage fright as an example. If you go in to give a speech and there's only 3 people in the room, may not be that nervous, but what if there's 3,000? Your stage fright might be multiplied. Okay, so group pressure is what I'm talking about, this multiplication of impact. When I talk about it, there's this pressure to follow these group norms. I don't want to go off on that. You know what a norm is. But when people don't follow the norms, then there's this rejection of these people, the rejection of the deviant. We don't like those people. Why don't you just act like a boy? Why don't you just act like a girl? These are my favorite people. I'm fixing to get into them. Okay, so here's Young Thug. I love Young Thug. Young Thug is not gay, I don't think, but he does wear dresses, and in the hip hop culture, that's pretty fucking brash, him wearing this kind of a dress. I think I have these 2 pictures I just got because I like people that are gender fluid in the middle. It's like, I know you might not like these people, but I love these people. They're willing to, walk that line. Okay, so why do we conform? If you were in my social class, I'd go into this in a lot more detail, but Deutsch and Gerard, do know this for the test, talked about 2 different reasons. One is called normative influence. I just want to appear normal so that I don't get hurt. That has a lot to do with gender, right? I don't want to get into gay bashing right now, but I could. The second thing is called informational influence. In this case, if I can pick a different pen, informational, I conform because I truly believe. Think about a lot of religion or other things. People are buying into it. They truly believe. Even soldiers, they believe in their purpose. And so normative influence is kind of faking it, and informational influence is really believing it. That's why this one is called internalization. You've internalized it. Now, the example I use, but a lot of social psychology is based on this guy, is Mr. Adolf Hitler. In Nazi Germany, a lot of people were faking it. It's like, dude, I just don't want to get hurt. I want to pretend like I'm a good Nazi. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like I don't want to go in Glorious Bastards, but at the very first of the movie, they're hiding those people underneath the floorboards, right? But then there were some people like Christoph Waltz, they're totally sold into, the Third Reich, and Mein Kampf and, Der Fuhrer and the whole 9 yards, hook, line, and sinker. If you were in my social class, we get into cults and gangs and how people internalize these things and how deep-seated these beliefs can become. Now, what does this have to do with gender? This is one of my favorite proverbs. I think it's a Chinese proverb. The nail that sticks out farthest gets hammered the hardest. That's this guy right here. I do it on purpose. But I don't know if you've seen this movie, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. It's one of my favorite movies. I know I say that about every movie. But this guy right here is sticking out. And then there's the jock that's fitting in with traditional masculinity, but that dude's gay too. And he doesn't get picked on, but this dude does. Why? Because he's sticking out. And speaking of sticking out, here's one of my heroes. His name is David Bowie. I love him. You know what I mean? Because he was walking that line way long time ago, showing the fluidity between what is male and what is female. Okay, I made this little thing up right here, the gender police, and what I believe is that sometimes we have these people out there that are enforcing gender norms. They're called parents in society. And so if you see your son or daughter playing with certain things, like, uh-oh, wait a minute, we have a deviant right here. I got to go, enforce the rules and correct that behavior. That's why I'm so big on shaping or formation when it comes to gender. Now, Can and Van in 1995 did this great study. They asked little boys and girls, what would happen if you woke up tomorrow and you had changed gender? This is the best study of all time. It's so simple. They just asked them, and they got all the responses, and they came up with two categories, basically. Boys imagine disaster, and girls imagine advantages. It's like when they ask adults, they've made similar judgments. If you ask men, if you woke up tomorrow and you were a girl, it's like, oh shit. Now it gets real, doesn't it, dudes? You know what I mean? It's like, if it goes the other way, it's like, well, wait a minute, now I might be advantaged. And so, how does this relate to Sigmund Freud? Why would I have him on here? Well, these two findings, advantages. It's not really about having a penis. Remember Karen Horney? It's about the privileges bestowed upon men. And boys imagine disaster. It's really not getting your penis cut off. It's about losing your power. And if you think about this, oh, I forgot I had this on here, tomboys and sissies. This is for you, Zoe. But anyway, tomboys and sissies, Martin suggests girls are allowed more leeway in behaving like a boy. They can kind of butch up. Boys can't sissy down. Ask me, I'm a sissy. This is what I grew up as, a sissy. And so, anyway, sissies get a hard time. It's not big old butch gay guys. We can go to Pride right now and I'll show you some of the butchest men you've ever seen. You know what I mean? But it's the sissies that get, gay bashed. And so in a patriarchal society, if you do this, you're walking down the ladder. You're acting more feminine. That's not necessarily a good thing in a patriarchal society. And so as a female, if you walk up the ladder, that's a great thing. You're empowering yourself. Even though you're butching up, it's like, but you're adopting the correct traits from a patriarchal perspective. So here we have this term emasculated. I don't think we have a synonymous term over here. Think about this movie right here. He's emasculated for being a male nurse. I mean, he's got a good career, but they keep saying, well, I'm not a doctor, you know what I mean? It's like, and so they're making fun of him because he's walking down the ladder career-wise. But if you talk about emasculated, if you walked up the ladder and you're a female doctor, nobody makes fun of you, right? We'll get into this when we talk about careers. Now, I love, talking about these women that adopt male traits because we celebrate them, especially in the media. If I did a class with women in film, I would do it a lot different, maybe. But here's aliens, and look at how Sigourney Weaver, I mean, she just butches up throughout the series, just like, I'm going to fucking take care of it. All the men are kind of being sissies in this respect. And Terminator. I mean, Linda Hamilton, she doesn't get any better than right here. She's so fucking sexy, and she's ready to handle some fucking business, and she's adopted these masculine traits. And so I think I have two left on here. I love the girl with the dragon tattoo, Lesbeth. I want to be Lesbeth and wreak havoc on some mother effers. I'm sorry, but you could argue Margot Robbie. I'm so in love with her. But anyway, she's a badass in a way too, in her role as Harley Quinn. Okay, enough about that section. Okay, this is what I really want to talk about today. Really, I wanted to do the whole lecture on it. It's transgender people. I'm an advocate for T's. So if you don't like T's, too bad. So as this term goes, transgender or transgendered, it started off in the 1980s and it was really a broad umbrella. Here's the trans umbrella right here. I mean, transvestite, cross-dressing people. But Young Thug, cross dresses. That says nothing about his sexuality. You had the intersex people. We talked about the hermaphrodites, the XXY, the XYY, the pseudo hermaphrodites, all these people. You have non-binary people, which I love these people, like gender queer, gender fluid. They don't associate with one or the other, or associate with both. Like, I believe I'm a Burdash, like from the Native American tradition, the two-spirit that both a man and a woman inhabit my body. I know that's kind of crazy. But anyway, transsexual is the term that most people are really meaning when they say transgendered. And I'm going to come back to this. People that are born are trapped inside of the wrong body. And so here's the genderbred person. And so when I talk about the genderbred person, there's several different concepts. The first concept is your gender identity. Do you identify as a man, a woman, or do you think of yourself as both or neither? There's all these different categories that we'll get into. The second one is the easiest one, biological sex. Do you have a penis, a vagina, or are you caught in betwixt like all the hermaphrodites or pseudo-hermaphrodites? This one I'll save for a whole nother day. Who are you attracted to? I mean, Young Thug can wear dresses and be attracted to women. And so that leads into this fourth one, gender expression, because that's how you express yourself to the world. You could wear, traditional male clothing, or like I just mentioned with Young Thug, wear dresses, but still identify as male, still know that you're biologically male, and be attracted to women. I hope that the genderbred person makes sense. Okay, I'll come back to that here in a little bit. Okay, so one component of it that drives me crazy is this. Sexual orientation is different than gender identity. They're two orthogonal concepts. They can be correlated, but many times they're not. And so when you look at this stuff, if I can erase this right here, you have stuff like straight, gay. Who do you like to sleep with? Both, everybody, nobody, right? But T is not a sexual orientation. That's what drives me crazy. Most people identify as cisgendered. What does that mean? I was born XY, I'm a man, and I identify as a man. Or I was born XX, I'm a female, identify as a female. But transgender people, I was born XY, but I believe I should have been a woman, right? And so that's the trip across genders. So when I look at the LGBT, I'm always going, the T's out of place. LGB says something about who you sleep with. T doesn't. That's one of the misunderstandings behind T. You can be straight and be a T. So transgender, this is the symbol for it. I want to go off for a minute, but it started off in the DSM-5 as a disorder, a psychological disorder. Much like something else, homosexuality used to be considered a disorder until the 1970s. Okay, and so this is why I'm an advocate for transgender people. If you don't like transgender people, fuck you, because they are struggling. They're struggling not only to fit into society and who they are, but also with this whole moniker that somehow they're a weirdo from psychology. Now, if you look at the gender dysphoria traits, because now they've relabeled it luckily, and it's not a disorder, just like body dysphoria would be, that, I keep stating I'm the other sex as a little kid. The kind of toys I play with and the rejection of certain toys right here. But this is the big one. I want to have the other body parts. You know what I mean? My body parts don't feel right to me. And so this is the whole idea that most people are saying when they say transgender. It's like really transsexual. Trans across the sex. I'm going to make a trip across sexes, but once you make the trip across, you ain't T no more. T is just the trip. And the trip is over because now you've arrived. And so hopefully that kind of made sense. You're trapped inside the wrong body. These people feel trapped in the middle, kind of. And if you're trapped inside the wrong body, I have this statistic always shown here, it's 6 times more likely to happen in men than women. My personal opinion is that has something to do with, patriarchy and the latitude we give men and all this other stuff. But I don't want to go off on that. What I really wanted to talk about is a couple of terms that I'll mention throughout my lecture on transgender people, but F to M or M to F. Are you making that F to M transition, but the transition is over, so you're already an M now? And same thing the other way. So you can be pre-op or post-op, and if we were in class, I could really get into a lot more detail about this. Now, I have 3 different people on here, but you remember Bruce Jenner. Now he made the trip across and he's Caitlyn. He ain't T no more. He's Caitlyn. A lady. He has lady parts, or I should say she has lady parts. It's totally inappropriate, but it's hard for me with pronoun use sometimes. This is the T, or post-T. This is Miss Canada. She's really pretty. She used to be a man. So what I'm going to show you is this couple. It's one of my favorite movies. I have a ton of movies about transgender people, but I can only show 2 of them today. And on the next slide, I'm fixing to show the first one to try to give you some understanding of what T looks like and what it means.
What? Nothing. What? No, we're not.
Katie Hill and Aaron Andrews look like any young couple having fun in the sunshine. But until recently, these teenagers didn't feel they could splash about like this in their swimwear. Just 2 years ago, the slim girl in the bikini was a boy called Luke, and the boy in the shorts was a girl called Emerald. Katie underwent gender reassignment surgery a year ago at the age of 18. Now Aaron has taken the life-changing decision at the age of 17 to have both breasts removed, to give him the male physique he's always craved.
Well, of course I was worried. I mean, he was going into a big, massive, serious surgery, but I knew he was going to be okay. He was going to a really, renowned doctor for the surgery, and he had his family there, and I knew he was going to be okay, but more of anything, I just missed him when he was gone.
Katie felt sure Aaron was ready for his elective surgery, despite being only 17.
I knew that he was going to be okay, and I knew he was going to be happy. I didn't feel like he was going to be scared of it. I felt like he was ready, just like how I was ready for my surgery.
And Aaron is over the moon with his new look.
How you feeling?
I'm a little sore, but it's all good. I'll show you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I still got some scar tissue around my nipple and here, but you can see the where they put anesthesia in right here. Mm-hmm. And then the head drain tubes. You can't see it anymore.
Now Aaron feels far more comfortable with his appearance.
When you're transgender, you learn that your outside doesn't matter, it's what's on the inside. When I look in the mirror now, I just see what I've always seen. It's just a guy.
Aaron's surgery now means he can go boating with Katie without anyone ever guessing about their past.
I have some manly features, but none that I don't think anyone can really pick out.
Just the same thing as I have
Kinda like
the hips to me.
Yeah, I have some personality, kind of like a Tom girlish personality, but
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't think anyone could really notice.
The only thing I do want to do that would make me more masculine is gain more weight. Not, weight, like fat weight, but actual muscle weight, and just really start hitting the gym once I get my chest healed up so I can pull off a more masculine look and fill in my curves and stuff.
Aaron may decide to have further surgeries in the future, but for now he's enjoying his newfound freedom with Katie at his side.
Being transgender myself, I understand Aaron probably better than anybody else, and how good he feels and how complete he feels. And I think that bond that we have is unbreakable.
Boy, I shouldn't say this, but every time I watch that video, I start crying my head off like a big old girl that I am. And that's totally inappropriate, but it's so sweet to see that couple and to see how at home they are in their new bodies and with each other. And so usually in class, I would, talk about these two different movies if I can find my clicker here. Boys Don't Cry, based on a real story that happened up in Nebraska, I believe it is. It's a heartbreaking story, but it's about a girl that lived as a boy, and Tina Brandon, but she lived as Brandon Tina, and the tragic things that happened to her because that she lived as a transgender person. And then another one that's more comical that you could take a look at, but I love Felicity Huffman in this movie, even though, she was involved in controversy. But it's Trans America, and it's a more comedic look at, the struggle that a T has to go through. Okay, so what I'm going to do is on the next slide, I'm going to show, I spoke too soon. On the next slide, I was going to talk about transphobia. Because a lot of people think that T's are freaks, or why don't you just be yourself? Even from I'm a Christian, a Catholic, and a lot of people are like, oh my God, they're just being ungodly. It's like, that doesn't really look like a man or a woman. Why would you transition if you're just going to be gay? There's all these things you can't probably read on here. I try to be good with pronoun use, and if I'm wrong about it, I feel horrible because I want to call the person he or she or they or whatever they want to be called. And so the next video I'm going to show is about a Christian family that has a kid who is T, and about their struggle and also this kid's struggle with being a T. And this is why I'm so adamant about it, because it's not like they're just having a party because they're transgender. It's like it's the opposite. They're struggling even 10 times more than gay people, and they don't know what to do about it, and then their families aren't accepting them. And so this is why I'm so worked up. I wish we were in class and we could go off on a discussion right here, but here's the video.
My birth name was Gianna. For as long as I can remember, I always felt male. I did come out to my parents as a lesbian sometime around 7th, maybe. I thought, oh well, I seem to wear boys' clothes all the time. I feel masculine, and I realized that I like girls, so I was like, okay, I must be a lesbian. That was tough. My dad, he just wouldn't have any part of it. I think he said something to me. He said, this is not a world that you're gonna be a part of. Then, when I got to my freshman year, I identified as trans, so I came out to them again as a trans male.
At that point, I was using pronouns she and her, and he said, Mom, when you say that, when you say she, it feels like I'm actually naked and I feel horrible and I just want to disappear. So I started to say G, and now he would like to be called John. So I just go between both names still. It's still getting used to the process of the name.
So it's still G to me. Certainly not the Gianna from, childhood, but it's still G, and I haven't switched over to the John. It's a little harder for me. I feel in a sense like something's been robbed, right? Like, so my daughter's gone, it seems, and is morphing into this other person, but I feel like this may be where it ends up. I don't know. I hope not, but I think there's another way. There's a whole spiritual side to this to me, so I pray a lot, and and the whole spiritual piece of this is, I just don't believe that this is the right way to go. This is a personal place that I'm at. I want G happy. I want, the best life for her. I want that life based in, how do I put this? It's just, on the path that God is planned for her. I don't know that this is it. This route, to me, can be an eternal death. She may not see that, but there's a hope that if I can just stay there, show the love, see what happens, and we have to take it day by day.
With the upbringing that we had, we were taught that, man and a woman and a man is bad and, they're damned. And that's how we grew up. That's what we grew up thinking. But in time, I realized with regard to my child, this is the way he's felt on the inside for so long.
Merry Christmas, Gigi.
I mean, he could hardly speak when he was pulling on his tights saying, this is not what I want and this is not who I am. I don't understand how you could be born that way and have that happen, and yet, it's something that you could be damned for. It doesn't make sense to me.
Wave hi, everybody. Say hi. Say hi.
I always had a hard time making friends. I think part of it was that I was a very strange kid. I would just feel bad because every day I went to school, I just felt like everybody wanted me to go. Nobody wanted me there. Yeah, one time, this girl, we were in the girls' locker room, so we have to change for gym. She just went off on me. She was like, "Man, you're an ugly dyke. You're a lesbian." It just kind of went from shaky to unstable to almost impossible. That's what it felt like. By the end, I was just trying to hang on. I started getting some anger issues in my sophomore year when I was very stressed out. Sometimes I would break and I would punch a hole in the wall or kick a hole in the wall or things like that. I would just get so mad. Eventually I could keep it from all spilling out, but it would spill in. I was just drifting off into this very violent experience into my head. Sometimes I would think about harming my family. The images just pop up in my head. It got so bad. And that's when I really decided I feel like a threat to my family. I feel like a threat to myself. I just can't control myself. So very late at night, I went down to my mom. I was just crying. And I said, "Hey, I want you to take me to a hospital. I want to get locked up."
That's what really motivated me, to know that he was in so much pain and that I could be causing it. That was too much for me. I just have to support him, and I kind of just have to figure out whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. But today, he needs me, and that's what I'm gonna do, whatever he needs me to do.
I guess I'm holding out on hope that, could this reverse there's a possibility this is going to move fully forward, and this is where G is going to go. That's a possibility too. I just can't make that switch just for me, myself. I don't talk about anybody else. It's because it's a personal issue, and where you're at, the choice for me is I can't go there.
Does that person look like they're having a good time? Do they think they're just having fun and having a party? My name is Tim, and I'm a Christian, and I'm for transgender people because there's nothing wrong with them. They're just fine the way they are, and that's what the Sacred Heart of Christ is really all about. Okay, the third and final section, I had to pull myself together there. Oh my God, it makes me so sad, especially because gay kids kill themselves at 4 times the national average. And then you think about transgender kids, what is that rate? I don't even want to know it. But the third area I want to go into that relates to gender formation or gender identity is cognitive psychology, which is all about our thinking. And if you have me before, I talk a little bit about this, but I haven't talked about these two concepts. The first one is gender labeling. This one's easy. Can I label you as a boy or a girl? This means like little kids. At what age can little kids have the cognitive ability to say, that's a boy, that's a girl? Most of the time, for instance, if you have a pet or something, it's like, oh, is that dog a boy or a girl? At a certain age, there becomes that point where you develop this whatever, good, bad, or indifferent, for genderqueer people, I'm fixing to get into them. It's like, okay, we divide the world into sheep and goats, boys and girls, whatever. We start dividing the world. Now, besides that cognitive ability that they've researched, another cognitive ability they've looked at is gender constancy. This is the idea that little kids understand that for the most part, if you're born a boy, you stay a boy, and vice versa. Now, I just went off on transgender people, and they throw a whole monkey wrench into this one because that's not always true. But they looked at these two concepts. Number one, gender labeling. Number two, gender constancy, to see at what age do kids start to acquire these two features. Again, we're talking about cognitive psychology, which is all about our thinking. Now, about 2 years old, don't write all this down. Around 2 years old, you can't do either. You can't label yourself as a boy or a girl. You can't label other people as a boy or a girl consistently, I should say. Around 3 or 4, you start to label people as boys and girls. That's why I have this little pet on here. He's a boy dog. He's a girl. She's a girl dog, whatever. So you get this, but you still have problems with gender constancy. For instance, if your dad puts on a wig, you think he turned into a girl. Okay, so they've looked at little kids and how their mind starts to form as it gets more and more sophisticated. And then finally, right around 5 or 6, they finally develop the ability to say, okay, that's a boy, girl, or whatever, that's a boy, and it pretty much stays, those people are going to stay boys or girls, respectively. Okay, I could care less about all this stuff. What I really focus more on is it is the category, but schemas. Now, if you had me before, I love talking about schemas, which are these mental folders, let me get this off of here, that help us organize information about the world. We have all kinds of schemas, and we have these schematic representations up here in our head about the external world out there. Now, like in biology, we have the whole taxonomy of everything that lives on planet Earth. Now, when I think about schemas, I think, well, if we have these folders in our head, they kind of go in these little cutesy filing cabinets. And so I'm real organized, OCD boy, and I think if I get real schematics, then I can really understand things. But that's not always good. Okay, because with gender schemas, then we sometimes, get real stereotypical, and that's the next lectures. We're going to be on stereotypes, where it's like, oh yeah, girls like this kind of stuff, and boys like this kind of stuff, even down to pink and blue. And so some people are really core schematic people. I can't say that very well, and other people aren't. And this is what's called gender schematic. Some people, like my father's like, it's a boy or a girl. Everything has to be a sheep or a goat. You have to be 0 or 1. I have to know. That's why I love genderqueer people or transgender people or all kinds of people that are in the middle that are just like fucking with people. Thank you. But anyway, enough about that. Gender aschematic people are loosey goosey. Well, boys can wear pink, girls can wear blue. Boys can play with dolls, girls can play with trucks. They just don't have that real strong categorization of what is male and what is female up in their head. I grew up with this hardcore categorization, butch and femme, and they were heteronormative or respective to male and female. Okay, so later on I'll get back to that. Okay, ambiguous. I love ambiguous people. This is one of my favorite models. He's so fucking hot. I'm not kidding either. Very pretty. But it's a guy, and if I could show a million pictures of him, I think I might have shown one on day one. It's like a really sexy and erotic guy, but he's very ambiguous. He's in the middle right here. That's why I love him as a model. There's a lot of gender queer or gender fluid models that I really like. But what folder do I put him in? It's like, uh-oh is right. Because for people that are genderqueer, gender fluid is another category too, where you go between, back and forth. But genderqueer, it's like when they come to this category, it's like, well, fuck that. I'm not checking one of these boxes. I ain't checking one of your dumb boxes. That's why I call myself queer. I don't like to check straight or gay. I've had sex with boys and with girls, but I like girls better, but I don't want to check straight or gay because I'm bent. I'm really bent. You know what I mean? But I still like girls, and so try to put me into a category. I hate that shit. And so it doesn't make me any less of a person. Okay, so what I'm really talking about here are two different concepts. Rigidity, and some people are very rigid. I have to have you in a folder, or flexibility. It's like I don't have any folder down here. And on the next slide, I think I'm going to show some stuff from Sandra Blum that relates to these two concepts. Okay, we're almost done. If you're still with me, I think I only have 2 or 3 more slides. Here's Sandra Blum in 1985. We'll come back to her because she was really groundbreaking in the area of gender research, but she focused in on sexist formation, like, you know, where you grow up at. It's like racist formation. You grow up around racist or sexist, you're likely to adopt that kind of mentality, right? And she noticed in families that weren't sexist is that the parents focused on the biology. Yeah, like a boy has a penis and a girl has a vagina, but they didn't focus on like girls can't have a truck or boys can't have a doll. That was just like fluid. And in those families, that you had a much more open-minded people and less schematic, more aschematic people. They don't worry about trying to categorize, that's a boy, throw like a girl, all this other kind of bullshit. Okay, so here's 7 things that, you know, relate to her research as far as what would promote being more flexible. And so being more flexible, the first thing that promotes that is being a female. Females are more flexible. I think that's because patriarchal society. Get me? Okay, the second thing that promotes being flexible is having parents that question traditional attitudes towards gender. I mean, if Ruth Bader Ginsburg is your mama, you're going to question a few things. You know what I'm talking about? It's like I dissent. Having parents who concentrate on biological, well, that was her research. That's the one I just showed you on the previous slide, number 3. 4 is interacting less with parents. That's kind of weird. But see, you don't model. If you don't model your fathers or your mothers, that's that Freudian identification kind of a stage. You just go, okay, I'll just do whatever. 5 is having gender siblings and peers, friends who are flexible. Okay, who you hang out with. If you don't hang out with racists, you won't be a racist probably. And then 6, it says living in a single parent home headed by mother. That's the thing it says over here, mother. So if your mom is the head of the household, a lot of research has been done back in the day on African American households headed by females and how that the males have different perspectives of what females are supposed to be like. It's great. I love that research. And then 7, having mothers who work outside the home. If your mom works outside the home versus she's a homemaker, I mean, like you would get less traditional views about women. So I hope that these 7 make sense. I was going to come back to one last thing, and this is the last slide, I promise. They've done some research, and I would argue that when you're really young, maybe you can't even label what's a boy or a girl. So how can you be rigid? But as you get to a certain age, it's like, oh, is your dog a boy or a girl? You get real rigid as a kid. It's like, oh, girls do. Oh, I don't do what girls do. I don't do what boys do. And we'll get into that later on a little bit more. But then maybe you soften, because when I hang out at the wrong place, like the senior ministry almost every day at daily mass, and I go, yeah, but there's not much difference between the couples now. Maybe that's because their libido is like, faded a little bit. But I don't know. One time I was showing this in class, and then I was thinking, well, maybe it's not like that. Because I know my dad is just as rigid as he's ever been. It's like he don't like no transgender people like that are questioning like the duality of this thing over here. It's like, a boy or a girl, get into the right category. And so I don't know. And this also leaves, this whole thing that there's just only a female and a male, and there's no in betwixt. Well, what about all these people? Remember all these people? And you could say, oh, well, that's not many people. Oh, 1 in 1,000 people have Klinefelters. That's a lot of fucking people in the United States of America. Okay, so I hope I shed a little light on the misunderstanding of gender identity today. I'll see y'all next time.